What's the creepiest thing you've ever found in an old building? Went to an abandoned hospital. There was a large square staircase spiraling up to the roof on the outside of the building. Locked steel door at the bottom, so the only way up was to climb the outside up to the first landing. My buddy boosts me up. I climb over and there's a sleeping bag with a steak knife next to it on the landing. I call down, we're definitely not alone here, dude. No, but it's cool, says a voice behind me, scaring the crap out of me and causing me to jump and whirl around. There's a young, dirty, homeless-looking guy just standing there, coming down the stairs from above, hands up, palms out. I didn't mean to scare you. He takes a seat on the stairs, so I carefully step on the handle of the steak knife, lean down over the edge, and pull my friend up. We had planned to sit on the roof and drink beer, so we offer homeless guy a beer, which he gratefully accepts, and we shoot the crap on the landing for a while. We're talking about the city, the cops, traveling, life in general. He's basically a drifter, been in town for a week or so, but a nice guy. Things are going pretty well, and then he asks, "You guys are human, right?" I frickin' hate it when I meet people that end up being aliens. You never know until you peel their skin off. They've been after me a long time, you know. They don't stop. They never stop. Sometimes I think I should just kill everyone to be safe. He's definitely not joking, and there's an uncomfortable silence as my friend and I realize this guy is freaking crazy. "Yeah, man," I say, "we're human, we just wanted to check out the place and drink some beer. We're gonna go ahead and move on now, we definitely don't want to be any trouble." He just stares in silence, so we leave him the last beer, carefully back up to the railing, jump down and walk away very quickly, constantly looking back over our shoulders the entire time. He's just standing there, still and silent, watching us leave. That place is still abandoned 5 years later, and we've never been back. I'm not a believer in the supernatural, but humans can be deceptive and dangerous in ways that you can't see coming. Holy crap! This guy seemed chill, but meeting people like him is what makes me tense when reading these stories. Ghosts? Monsters? Screw that, I'm worried about meeting some unpredictable creep or a Satanist mid-ritual. Also, serial killers. I wonder how many of his ilk I pass in normal places every day. Definitely don't want to meet them anywhere, especially alone in a dark abandoned building. That's a cool story for sure though. A group of my friends and I explored an abandoned asylum/mental hospital a couple of years ago in the OKC metro. Was very unsafe at night for a silly college freshman like us. The first experience we had was all of us taking our merry time enjoying the darkness and generally messing around. You have to come in through a broken window, and we were all gathered at the window just being dumb when we hear loud, echoing footsteps down the hall running toward us. We all did that. Who the heck isn't here? Who's messing with us? Look and turn, and after realizing that we're all present and none of us are sprinting down a dark, abandoned hallway, we booted it out of there. The second time we could hear a group of people messing with us, jumping from around corners and such, but they never got too close. We assumed it was an animal at first, but got brave and realized it was a person. We managed to catch them, and after staring at a collection of seemingly drugged-up 20-somethings who begged us for cans of paint and cigarettes, we got the not-so-good vibes. Finally, you say? And we tried to leave. The leader of the haunted asylum cronies asked if we had jewelry, which we denied. He then said the creepiest thing I've heard in my life. "I like jewelry. I take it off the girls here when they sleep." We fricking bolted. What? Why ever did you run? Seemed like a nice, well-adjusted fellow. People these days are so judgmental. I'm kidding, of course. I wouldn't blame you if you were still running, guy who wrote this story 6 years ago. Nothing big, but I was once exploring a drainage tunnel with friends. We were pretty deep inside of it and turned a corner to see someone leaning against a wall with a hat on. It ended up being a sandbag someone dressed up, but it scared the crap out of me because it was pretty deep in there. There were pants and shoes and a jacket with a hat on it. I don't know what they did to make the jeans look like legs because I didn't touch it or go back. A friend of mine went back and told me it was a sandbag and I was already done for the day. So someone a long time ago went in there and dressed up a sandbag just so someone else would be spooked? We were kids exploring an underground flood channel. There were spots we could climb up and dangle our arms out of the storm drains on the street, but that required crawling up weird diagonal tunnels. There were 4 of us, maybe 12 years old, 1 flashlight. The walls were all graffitied with a lot of gang stuff and even warnings to turn back. Blah blah blah. We just interpreted that as other kids being bored. We got to the spot where the ceiling angled down quite low to the point the opening was so small we had to crawl to continue. Challenge accepted. It looked like it opened up again shortly, so we crawled through 5 to 6 feet of the low area when it opened back up. It looked like we were in a large round concrete pipe, before it was square or rectangular. Still lots of graffiti. We started yelling and playing with the echoes, then we thought we heard something, so we got quiet. Then a real loud, "You're gonna fricking die!" came echoing from the darkness. The kid with the flashlight ran so fast, the rest of us were left in absolute darkness. Anyways, this was the first time we passed the low spot, but the last time we went down there. None of us died that day, the rest of us ended up quietly and slowly walking out in the darkness. This isn't urban exploration, more rural exploration, I suppose you could call it. I was working on a project for a photography project. There was a massive forest up a mountain near where I live. Said forest contains an abandoned hospital that was shut down after an unexplained death. No, I'm not joking. So it's a crappy day weather-wise. I'm in a wood with a camera and a packed lunch ready to go wandering. After a few hours, I found a small camp with some abandoned tools, including a massive bolt cutter. Someone had tried to destroy them in a fire, but that was a no-go. Maybe 200 to 300 meters away, I found a burned-out car. Not an uncommon sight in the area. Kids buy super crappy, clapped-out bangers and trash them up there. Not far away, about running distance, I found a pair of woman's jeans. And a little further away from that, maybe 5 meters or so, there was a pair of panties hanging on a low branch. They'd clearly been there for a while. I'm not sure how long underwear would last exposed to Irish weather, and these were right out in the open, but a few weeks maybe? Pretty creepy finding all of that alone in the woods. I flipped through local news for anything on any break-ins, assaults, or anything suspicious, and couldn't find anything that had happened recently. For the record, I did contact police, but they pretty much told me it was just littering, no actual evidence of any wrongdoing. My friends, who always go exploring, told me about this time that they were just following a trail that went up into the hills, and after almost reaching the freeway, they ended up near an old closed-up train tunnel. They were able to squeeze through some of the loose fencing, and after wandering through with nothing of interest, they eventually came to a bunch of shipping containers. They told me that when they glanced inside, they saw a ton of weapons and ammunition in one, and just a crap ton of heavy boxes in the rest. After a few minutes of checking it out, they heard voices from further down the tunnel coming closer, so they got out of there. They also said it almost smelled like the ocean toward the end, so the tunnel might have led out near the beach. The place they hiked to was somewhere between Santa Barbara and Oxnard in California. As they stopped on the 101 going southbound and started their hike and ended up returning to the car and going to Oxnard at the end of the day. They made a report to the police, but I haven't heard of anything coming of that on the news or otherwise. Also, some people said it might be smugglers, but given that the crates were unlocked, the tunnel was unguarded, and it was accessible to anyone who wandered out there, I doubt that's the case. If it was, they were either just about to take off or they were really stupid smugglers. Last winter, I went into this abandoned parking lot under a closed shopping mall. It had 2 levels. The upper level had a bit of sunlight coming in through the windows, but the lower level was pitch black. I made my way down this wide ramp that the cars would use, and I decided to have a look at the bottom level. After turning my flashlight on, I noticed that the space was huge, much bigger than the upper level. I remember how the light danced through the many supporting pillars and cast vivid shadows. I said, "Hello," and "I'm just looking around," just to make my intentions clear, but was met with no response. So I decided to walk around for a bit, but couldn't see anything of interest. Just a lot of junk, some empty old bottles, but nothing that might indicate someone living or hanging around there. The place seemed completely abandoned, however this uneasy feeling that someone might be hiding in the pitch-black shadow of one of these pillars took the better of me, and I climbed up the ramp. I left taking a different route and passed under an overhead clearing that snow had fallen through. Just as I was about to hop the fence and leave, I noticed that the patch of snow that had formed had footprints on it. I know this doesn't really sound horrifying when you read it, as the logical explanation was that some poor chap had probably taken shelter from the cold outside, inside the lot. But still, being there creeped the heck out of me. I don't know what's creepier, this place or you saying, "I'm just taking a look around," to make sure nobody was there. If I were homeless and living in an abandoned place, I wouldn't respond to anybody saying, "I just want to look around." It seems like an easy way to make yourself a serial killer's next drifter victim. No thanks. Rural area landscape photography. Happen upon a long abandoned house and set up to snap a few images. Look in the window and it's perfectly furnished. Piano with music open, fishing gear, wood stove with fire nearby, magazines on coffee table, jackets on a coat rack, roll-top desk open with neatly stacked papers, family photos, small kitchen table with red tops and matching chairs, and one is pulled out. It was all covered in inches of dust. It looked like someone walked out in 1950 and never returned. That sounds equal parts haunting and beautiful. Although I'm not superstitious, my hackles would be up and I would be out of there at the first sign of any shadow that even looked vaguely ghost-like. Went to a closed-up mental hospital in my city with some friends at night. Everything was cool until we got to the basement, where there were 5-meter wide and 4-meter high lit tunnels going far to both directions. We headed down one and found a huge active generator. Then we went to the other way, and as we were about to hit another intersection, we saw 2 men wearing full green attire and face masks walking at the end of one of the corridors at 2 a.m. We got out of there real quick. This didn't happen to be in Northville, Michigan, did it? If so, it's really more of a teal outfit. Well, we found the crystal cook, guys. Went to an abandoned retirement home/assisted living facility. Turns out it became the home to a group of crazy homeless crystal addicts and one very angry raccoon. They did not like trespassers. The guardians of the galaxy have fallen on hard times. I was exploring a certain abandoned mill near a large city on the coast with a friend. We snuck in, messed around a bit, and realized that we only had one flashlight. Took turns, weird noises, dark inside because there's no power, evidence of homeless occupation, and empty needles. Real horror game material. We came up the stairway and turned a corner. Ahead is a walkway bridge, aka the way to the rest of the building. To the right is a pitch-black room that doesn't feel very nice. As we walk toward the bridge, the flashlight picks out a sign that says, "To hell," and points towards this dark room. We didn't go in. It didn't feel right. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. My friends and I used to explore this old factory/processing plant, no idea what it was originally. Anyway, it had lots of underground sections that were pitch black, even a couple of meters from the entrance, but which also required going down a flight of stairs. One time we found a burned out car 2 to 3 levels down, no idea how it got there, but that was kind of creepy. Another time we found a hole. We didn't bring torches or flashlights with us because we're idiots, but we had lighters and we were trying to figure out what the hole was or if it could lead anywhere. We put a stick in there and it ended up being at least 6 feet deep, but we also learned it was full of some liquid and that if we had fallen in we could have easily drowned in the dark. Another time we went a couple of levels down and one of us at the bottom started screaming shrieks of absolute terror and the rest of us thought that we were all going to be murdered. We all started running, everyone was screaming at this point and there was this sludgy crap on the ground, and some of us slipped and fell just like in a gosh darn horror movie, slipping and sliding our limbs out of control. Again, there's 6+ people screaming bloody fricking murder with absolute fear and terror on their faces, so we all thought we were going to get murdered. Turns out a baby bird had made a nest down there and my sister got spooked and my friend screamed like an absolute baby. There was an abandoned hotel I was checking out. I gained access through a blown-out window near the indoor pool. It smelled like death inside. Came in to find a couple of bloated dead deer in the slime collecting towards the deep end of the pool. That should have been my sign to go. I make my way into the lobby and banquet areas, and I come across a couple of raccoons and squirrels who scurry away swiftly. Nearly everything is destroyed, even the reception desk has been ripped in half. Nothing of interest to photograph, just trash. Neat little piles of trash. After a bit of searching, I find the stairwell. There's an odd noise coming from above that I brush off as rain. I decide to skip a couple of floors because they're probably in the same condition as the lobby, and a lot of the exterior windows had been blown out. I get to 4 and open the door, not worried about noise as I'm confident that I'm the only sober person on the premise, if not the only person. As I pull the door open, the rain noise suddenly ceases completely. I point my flashlight down the hallway and see hundreds of geese poke their heads out of the guest rooms. I remember the moment when nothing moved and we just stared at each other as lasting several minutes, although I'm sure it was about 10 seconds. Here I am in the middle of the hall, geese of abandoned luxury staring me down. Once the initial shock of the sight wears off, I remember I'm only looking at half the floor. Behind me, geese aren't pulling a deer in the headlights move, they're coming toward me. Time to go. I close the stairwell behind me, only muffling the cacophony that erupted once I moved. As I hustled down the stairs, I realized the signs were there. Goose crap everywhere. I hit the lobby and turn toward the pool where a group of geese has collected as if they were trying to trap me. Luckily, they're just dumb birds. I got out to find the exterior of the hotel swarming with the frickers. There was one lone sentinel standing on the roof honking out a shrill command that the perimeter had been breached. Exploring an abandoned construction site. It's a site out in redneck country that's got a bunch of old construction vehicles getting overgrown with plants, and my girlfriend and I decide to check it out, to see what it's all about. We look around and don't see a whole lot. It's about to rain, so we decide to head out. As we're getting in my car, my girlfriend freezes and says, "There's a guy in the woods watching us." I crap myself and ask if she's sure. She repeats herself and says she saw her see him and he laid flat on the ground to hide himself. We noped out of there real frickin' quick. I live in a large African city which still has a fair amount of undeveloped or undevelopable space. And one rule to remember is that there is always someone else there that you may not see. There are people who sit alone, very quietly, in bushes or between boulders and other such places. They are, I think, harmless and don't do anything. But what they are doing has been a mystery to me for the 10+ years I've been here. Most of them are too well dressed or well taken care of to be homeless. One annoying thing is that they stare at you, or at least they don't hide the fact that they're watching you. I swear, if there was some completely inaccessible cave high up in a cliff here, requiring professional scaling equipment to enter, they would find a local African guy just chilling inside with no discernible means of how he got there. I mean, honestly, if he can get up there along with his means of cooking and entertaining himself, that just deserves an applause more than anything. Got to admire the effort. This phenomenon of the people in abandoned spaces has raised some questions, detailed here. This is the funniest crap I've ever heard. Please work up the balls just to talk to one and see what's going on. Well, greetings are very important here, so if I stumble upon someone like that, I'm obliged to greet them. They just greet back normally as if we're neighbors passing on the street. But I don't stop and talk because I don't know what they're doing. I've encountered this too in Madagascar. I'm not exactly sure what it's about. There it's just mostly older folks. Maybe they've reached a point in life where their kids are taking care of them and they're respected, so they just hang out and think. I guess a lot of the ones I see are older, that's true. I went to the abandoned living complex in Pennsylvania called Concrete City. We walked around a bunch of the buildings and stuff. At one point, one of my friends yelled, "Rich, come here!" I ran over, and there they were, 2 little kittens on a staircase with the words "Cloud Swag" spray-painted above them. We brought them home and I kept one. He still terrorizes me every day. When I was in college, a few friends and I went to this local abandoned hotel. It was a swanky place back in the 50s, but had just been sitting around abandoned and fenced off ever since. We walked by and saw an open window on a second-story ledge and ended up finding an old wooden ladder nearby on the property. We went in and hung around a bit and saw a bit of great graffiti. The whole place was trashed with actual garbage as well as bits of the building that were falling apart. We made it up the staircase to the 3rd floor, looking in each of the rooms. The area we were in used to be the housing for the staff of the hotel. The 3rd floor was covered in garbage from throughout the years. We got to the last room on the 3rd floor and looked in it to find a lit candle, with no one else around. Realizing we weren't alone, we booked it out of there, and once we were outside, looked up to see someone watching us from one of the windows. Now, we went to college in a city with a significant homeless problem and assumed we'd just stumbled onto someone's home, but still, that crap freaked us out. They cemented up the place after another explorer fell down an open elevator shaft and broke his legs, and it has recently been renovated and they're turning it into an apartment building. Not the creepiest find, but definitely freaked us out in the moment. In conclusion, searching an abandoned hotel, we found a lit candle that wasn't ours and was secretly watched by a squatter on the way out. This happened 8 years ago when I was a sophomore in high school. My urban explorer friends and I were on a bike ride looking for cool places to explore in a relatively dilapidated area when we discovered a really creepy cave. An old abandoned cement mine, we later learned. We did some mild exploring that first day, but quickly realized it would require a lot more gear to thoroughly explore. Flashlights, respirators, etc. About a week later, 5 of us came back with the proper gear and a camera to see what we could find in the mine. We discovered that there was basically one main shaft that sloped downward and deeper into the earth, so we followed that main route. It was wide enough for a car to drive down and was pretty well graded, so the walking was easy. There were many rooms, old machinery, and rusting equipment off this main shaft, but we mostly avoided it in the beginning. We were trying not to get lost or confused. Along the way, the walls were littered with the classic abandoned graffiti, X was here, swastikas, initials and dates, phallic drawings, etc. As we got deeper and deeper, the graffiti really thinned out. At this point, the light from the entrance was long gone, and we were relying solely on flashlights. The air was so stagnant and hazy with particles that the light from our flimsy flashlights would only go 20 feet or so before getting totally obscured by dust. Thank goodness for the respirators. The glow sticks we had bought to mark our way to prevent getting lost were also basically useless because they would disappear in the haze only a few steps after dropping them, and we had only brought 10 or so. At this point, we started arguing amongst ourselves. Several of the crew was nervous about going any deeper with the air quality being so terrible, and without a good way to prevent us from getting lost. We were probably a quarter mile into the earth now. The rest of us managed to override that sentiment of fear by assuring them that the path was easy and straightforward, so we'd have to try to get lost. We were going to rely on our level-headedness, sense of direction, and flashlight battery life to get out. Despite the agreement to push on, it was becoming very creepy for everyone. We walked for a while in silence, hearing nothing but our own movements and the steady drip of water coming from somewhere deep in the cave. I think we were all pretty scared at this point, but no longer willing to admit that to each other. Then we stumbled across something that made us all stop cold. Dug into the side of the deep stone shaft we were slowly descending was a tunnel, an offshoot. It was narrow, you'd have to crouch to go through it, and it was also a good few feet off the ground, so it required a scramble to reach it. But that wasn't what made us stop, it was the graffiti. We hadn't seen any for 10 minutes or so and assumed that the artists never came this deep. But someone else clearly had, and the message they left us was ominous. The tunnel was lined with words written in white, all of them somehow relating to death and destruction. Scrawled throughout the tunnel were words like suffering, pain, plague, disease, and hell. It was pretty terrifying. Who else would come this far just to write such terrible messages in a mysterious tunnel that broke off from the main path? But there was no turning back now, we had to see where the tunnel led to. Despite our fear, we were overpowered by intense curiosity. So one by one, we crawled through the tunnel to the other side. What we found was a strange flooded chamber. Around the pool of water were many large stones, each covered in dozens of burned-out tea candles. There must have been hundreds of used tea candles in the place. The walls had a few creepy monster faces, poorly graffitied on them, and the tunnel entrance back to the main shaft was ringed with a spray-painted, blood-stained mouth. What was this place? Some weird ritual site for local Satan worshippers? An elaborate hoax set up by a bunch of kids? We couldn't find much evidence to figure it all out, and we were running out of adrenaline to keep exploring. We all crawled out of that weird hellhole and back into the main shaft, where we promptly headed toward the exit. When we finally saw that pin crack of natural light coming from the real world outside, we were flooded with relief. We never did figure out what that mysterious cavern was for, and I think I'm content to leave it a mystery. No, we didn't hear any monsters in the depths of the tunnel or find any bloody Satan praises themselves, but just finding that room, buried deep in an old forgotten mine, was enough to creep us all out for a long time. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. Put the playlist on in the background to finish listening to all the stories, or if you want some vibey music to put on in the background, check out easymode. If you like Am I the Genius, give Am I the Jerk a shot. Everything linked in the description.